There has been a huge number of teasers released for the 4th chapter of Poppy Playtime, revealing detailed information about the main antagonist and his connection to the prototype, as well as updated cameras with new locations and monsters. I'm sure you're interested because, as it turns out, Catnap is still alive. Just recently, we examined all the images with descriptions of each smiling creature, and on the day the last picture with Catnap was released, the developers launched a major update to the ARG. And if you've forgotten, ARG tells us the story of a boy named Theodore, an incredibly important character from the 3rd chapter. Theodore is a little child from an orphanage who has an imaginary friend under the influence of whom he did various things. He ended up in the hospital due to a powerful electric shock, stole several GPAB packs from the warehouse, rifled through the filing cabinet with employee documents, and much more. That's what we'll talk about today. But let's go through everything in order, because first of all, updated recordings were discovered on the surveillance cameras. There are 3 brand new cameras showing familiar locations from the next chapter. Here, you can see the production area with huge cylindrical pistons constantly moving up and down, and footage from this place has already been shown by the developers. Next, on the cameras, a corridor with numerous prison cells appears, and you might have seen this place in leaked footage. However, something very interesting is hidden here because at some point we notice a small creature running by, about which fans are now speculating. Although everything is quite obvious, it's Bobby Bear, only in a smaller size. We saw exactly the same small catnap in this frame, and this most likely hints that each monster has its own mini version. Will they be kind and somehow help the player, or on the contrary, become an obstacle? It's hard to tell for now. And in the last recording, there's a children's room, undoubtedly the scariest thing we have at the moment. In the dark corner, Catnap is just staring into the camera. By the way, you might have seen this place before on the Steam page screenshots. And I noticed that some fans doubt whether the purple monster is actually in the recording, although upon closer inspection, we notice a talisman in the form of the moon, specifically associated with this character. And there's hardly any point in showing someone else here. Of course, it's all incredibly cool. However, there's a small detail you might have missed. If you didn't know, each camera has assigned itself a shortened name. For example, recordings from the game station are labeled with letters that in decryption give us Game Station. Meanwhile, the first camera is denoted by a single letter, and what that might mean is unclear to me. The second camera received such an abbreviation, which I think means Prison Corridor, which is quite logical. However, the name could be completely different, and the third camera is designated in such a way as Home Sweet Home, or simply Home. The place mentioned earlier in the ARG documents, as I suspected, is indeed the children's rooms. Well, here comes the most interesting part. Opening the Explorer, let's go to the Innovation folder, then to the Big Body Initiative, and the folder 1188. I'll remind you, 1188 is the experiment number, or more precisely, Catnap's experiment. All right, so here's the deal. A new file has surfaced, and you can unlock it with a password. This gets you a whole bunch of new images with reports. From this point on, the story of the boy Theodore resumes. First off, we learn that whoever influenced Theodore, his imaginary friend, was captured in the lower parts of the factory. Or so the rumors say, and the investigation into this matter continues. Secondly, the reports mention Theodore's oddities, antisocial behavior, and peculiar relationship with the imaginary being, as well as the disappearance of 2 grab packs and 2 green hands that were supposed to be used to open the gates. One of the devices was never found. Thirdly, we learn more about the investigation into Theodore's situation. The path to exit the shelter leads through a service access tunnel, and after construction was completed, it was preserved as an emergency exit. The tracks on the ground vanish right after the tunnel, and they belong to something other than a human. Fourthly, we come to a conclusion from the investigator. Whoever was there needed access to the exit, and the strangest part is they got it but didn't use it. Instead, they returned the child to the staff. If they hadn't done that, the child probably wouldn't have survived. So, after reviewing the documents, there's a lot of interesting and unclear information, so it's important to address a couple of questions. The first question is, who is Theodore's imaginary friend? It could have been anyone, especially since the descriptions of the creature that Theodore spends time with are vague. But the answer is quite simple, and it's found in a children's drawing from earlier parts of the ARG. Here, a child aged 7, just like Theodore, is depicted, and under his bed hides the prototype. Experiment 1006 became our boy's friend, manipulating him and using him for his own benefit. Considering how intelligent 1006 is described, it was no trouble for him to manipulate the child and carry out his own plan. This brings us to the second question. What goal did the prototype pursue? Many teasers for the third chapter mention the mysterious Hour of Joy, in which is encountered at every turn, and this clearly indicates its great significance. However, what exactly is meant by the Hour of Joy is still unknown to us. Presumably, it's the time when the prototype killed the factory workers and freed all the monsters, causing irreversible consequences that led to the factory's closure. Consequently, Theodore was needed to prepare for this Hour of Joy, and perhaps he was used as a cover because a lot of attention was paid to the child by the workers, which was extremely beneficial to the prototype. But then the final question arises, who is Theodore Grumble? What if I told you the boy became a victim of Playtime Company's dirty dealings? Experiment 1188. Catnap is Theodore. Why are there several confirmations of this? For example, a children's drawing, an image of a purple child, hands of the prototype, and an age designation all fit together. Additionally, documents about plans to create a purple monster list familiar names as candidates for experiments. Furthermore, there's a large document compiled by 3 employees, Harley Sawyer, Stella Greybear, and Late Pierre, each of whom writes their own report on the integration of Catnap into Playcare. The most important note in it is about the relationship between 1188 and 1006. It may pose a problem when they are in the same room. Catnap follows the prototype like a lost puppy, which is concerning, as his behavior could change rapidly. This once again tells us that Theodore became a victim of experiments and was placed in the body of the Catnap monster, and his good relationship with the prototype is clearly not to his advantage. More details will be revealed with the release of the 4th chapter of Poppy Playtime.